So again, this is the Benjamin Banneker prompt. And I'm going to read that task because I know there are always important pieces of information in there. I don't want to overlook that. Don't want to read too quickly or skip over it. So it says Benjamin Banneker, the son of former slaves, was a farmer, astronomer, mathematician, surveyor, and author. A lot of things that he did. So I'm looking for right now, I'm thinking in my mind as I'm reading through this, I'm thinking about, I want to understand, comprehend. I also want to identify rhetorical situation. I'm also looking for rhetorical choices, right? So right away I see speaker, right? Of course, our first line, it says speaker. So in addition to his name, I'm not going to take thorough notes on every part just for sake of time on this. So Banneker was the son of former slaves. This is significant. Remember, I just want to take notes and use significant information. This is significant because if I skim ahead to later on or at the end of this task, it says that the topic is slavery. So he's making an argument about slavery. He himself is the son of former slaves. That gives him credibility. We know that credibility is also known as ethos, right? So right there, I actually have a rhetorical choice before I even started reading the argument. That's ethos. But also the fact that he did all these different things. It seems like he was well-rounded, a well-rounded person. He seems to be a smart guy, a wise guy, a wise guy in the positive connotation, a wise man, a farmer, and a mathematician. Consider that you don't see those two things go together, right? So he was almost like a Renaissance man, if you've heard of that before, that term. Also the fact that he was well-rounded. That also gave him ethos, it would seem. All right. Next sentence, in 1791, context. I'm also thinking about, 1791, mentioned that topic of slavery because I looked down and I saw that already. 1791, I'm thinking, all right, in the United States, first of all, the United States was a country, right? It had been established as a country. Slavery was going on in 1791 because we know it wasn't until 1863, January 1st, that Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation. So slavery was still going on. That's important because the topic is slavery. He wrote to Thomas Jefferson, framer of the Declaration of Independence and Secretary of State to President Washington. So we have our audience there. It's an audience of one. That can be really helpful. That can make it a little bit easier. We know exactly who he's trying to persuade. One person, Jefferson. And if you have some background information about him, it can make it even easier. So it says who he was, and I won't write all that stuff out, but that's important for sure too. But more for context, Washington was president at the time. Now, interestingly, context. Both Washington and Jefferson were slave owners. That would just be from my background information, but I might be able to use that in some context, or I'm sorry, in some commentary. So Washington and Jefferson, slave holders. They also both got rich because of slaves. Okay. Last sentence, read the following excerpt from the letter, genre, and write an essay that analyzes how Banneker uses rhetorical strategies. Remember, that means rhetorical choices. It's the same thing. To argue against slavery. That's implied message. It's topic and message. So it doesn't tell us exactly, but I'm just going to put just very, if he's arguing against slavery, I'm just going to assume from that part he's arguing that slavery should be abolished. So that's all the information that I could get just from that little paragraph, that task at the top, right? Lots of information about the rhetorical situation. And I even have a rhetorical choice that he already has used. Okay, let's go ahead and start with body one. Any questions about the prompt there? Any questions about the prompt? Again, feel free to use the chat or the mic. All right, let's start with body one. Sir, I'm gonna stop there. First word, important. But I have to get kind of an overview of the whole thing. I got to look, I had to scan and skim. I see that sir is used, at the beginning of each paragraph. There's something going on with that, right? That's important. So because it's the beginning of each paragraph, and as I'm scanning and skimming, and I'll read later, it's used inside also in some places. So we know that's repetition. Sir, repetition. Where it happens matters. So I'm going to put it's not only in body one. So if I was going to analyze this repetition of sir, I'd say it's throughout the entire argument. So I'm going to put repeated at the beginning of each paragraph and within. So that means within paragraphs. Okay. First word. Why would this matter? Let's talk a little bit about commentary here, right, at the same time. By starting with sir, that's very respectful. By using sir throughout, that really establishes a choice we haven't talked about really at all so far, is tone. So that's a respectful tone. Right? He establishes right from the beginning a respectful tone when he's writing to the Secretary of State of the United States, right? He establishes this respectful tone. I think also by using sir, he does add a little bit more to his own credibility and his own ethos. So he's a man, of course, that has many talents. I'm talking about Banneker here, we see, but he's somebody who's respectful. And I think that gives him some credibility in the eyes of Jefferson as well. So I'm not ready yet to devote a whole paragraph ethos because of that, but I think there is some credibility that he's establishing for himself. All right, so in one word so far, I have repetition, although that's repeated later throughout, right? Tone and ethos. There are three, have some ethos already from prior, and I'm one word into this argument. There are a lot of things here. I should probably keep going because we need to go past one word. Sir, suffer me to recall to your mind that time in which the arms and tyranny of the British crown were exerted with every powerful effort in order to reduce you to a state of servitude. I'm going to pause there for a minute. By the way, that whole paragraph is one sentence. This was written a long time ago, 1791, right? And so we see this older writing style, very formal writing style. That is something I could analyze if I wanted to. We're not going to do that right now, is that formality and style. But we see this in older writing. We oftentimes see long sentences with lots of semicolons and commas and things like that. But what I want to do next in this half sentence, it's not even that full sentence yet, I want to interpret what he's saying there because I think that's pretty important. So that's where comprehension really comes in. And that can be tough in this one, right? So I think what he's really saying is, Sir Jefferson, do you remember that time when the British ruled over you guys, colonists, and they treated you like slaves? State of servitude, that's what he means by slaves. Do you remember when the British treated you like slaves? That's how he starts the letter. Remember what the topic is, slavery. So what I see here at the beginning of this is a comparison. It's a method of development. He begins, and what, where it happens matters, as I keep saying. He begins with comparison of actual slaves to the colonists, right? He's saying that the colonists were treated like slaves, he's implying. And that's very similar to, he's implying, because we know this about slavery, it's like the slaves, the true slaves by definition in the United States presently in 1791. So comparison. Let's read some more before I do some more commentary, why he would be doing that. Look back, I entreat you, on the variety of dangers to which you were exposed. Reflect on that time in which every human aid appeared unavailable, and in which even hope and fortitude wore the aspect of inability to the conflict. And you cannot but be led to a serious and grateful sense of your miraculous and providential preservation. You cannot but acknowledge that the present freedom and tranquility which you enjoy, you have mercifully received, and that it is the peculiar blessing of heaven. End of sentence, end of first paragraph. So we have that comparison, but I think in addition, we have another method of development that he's using here. Yeah, that's two methods of development in a single sentence, along with repetition. There was extra repetition, if you saw that. You cannot but. He says that twice. I'm not going to bother right now to type that down. It's there. I don't know how important it is. Maybe if we analyze the syntax, the sentence structure a little bit, but I'm not going to. I want to look at the description, because I think that method of development that he's using here is more description, where he's reminding and describing to Jefferson how he and fellow colonists were treated by the British, how terribly they were treated by the British. And he's implying the similarities to the way slaves are being treated. So that comparison again, and comparing to slaves. Right, and so he's reminding, so why would this matter here? Let's do a little bit of commentary. Jefferson has experienced this himself, right? And so, but by describing that, this would have likely brought back memories to Jefferson, so he could understand everything Banneker was sharing. But then Banneker is implying that that's how slaves are being treated right now, as we speak. He's implying that this, at minimum, this shouldn't be done anymore, because Jefferson didn't want it done to himself. Why would he want it done to slaves? So in this comparison, there's some logos as well too, right? If there's that implication that if it's not okay for you, why would it be okay for slaves? Right? So implying logos. It's a logical connection there, logical relationship. And one more last thing I'm going to say for that first paragraph. The word heaven is used. No, that's not illusion. Don't do illusion for that one, right? I mentioned that before. That blessing of heaven, I think he's starting to use some pathos there, but we got to look for more of this later on. Let's look for more pathos relating to religion later. All right, that's one paragraph, that's one sentence. So far, let's count the choices. Well, we had some ethos before we started. So it's 1, 2, repetition is 2, right? Respectful tone, that's 3. More ethos. Comparison, that's 4. Description, that's 5. Logos, that's 6. Pathos, that's 7. So like 7 rhetorical choices that are used in one sentence there. That's a lot, right? You don't need to find all of those, but we want to look carefully, slowly, read it multiple times, and they're there. You got to know what to look for. Let's keep going a little bit further though. We're looking for big picture, most important things. Second paragraph. This, sir, was a time in which you clearly saw into the injustice of a state of slavery. Now he's talking about when he was a colonist. When he was a colonist, he knew how unjust slavery was, and in which you had just apprehensions of the horrors of its condition. He's reminding Jefferson, remember when you were a colonist, you knew how terrible slavery was, right? So we know when he's implying this, or when he's stating this, he's implying like, well, what about now? It was now, sir, that your abhorrence thereof was so excited that you publicly held forth this true and valuable doctrine. Okay, so before I get to this really important part at the end of paragraph 2, what could we describe? What could we say? What is he doing there? We're saying, you really understood the depravity of slavery when you were a colonist. What kind of a choice is that, do you think? I'm tempted to say description. I don't think that that's the best way to do that. I mean, we could say pathos. I don't know if that's the best way to describe that either. Anybody have any suggestions what we could call that? I'm going to keep that in the back of my mind, and we're going to get to that next part. That's really important to finish the second paragraph. So that you publicly held forth this true and valuable doctrine, which is worthy to be recorded and remembered in all succeeding ages. Quote, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, and that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That's allusion. That's famous allusion. What is that allusion to? Who recognizes that? What is that allusion to? Okay, a couple people got it. That's allusion to the Declaration of Independence. But even more importantly, why does that matter? Why is that significant? Because Thomas Jefferson wrote those words. And not only did he write those words, but they contradict his current feelings, we could say, his current actions regarding slavery. He wrote in 1776 that all men are created equal, that they all deserve liberty, yet slavery is still going on. Right? So he's calling out Jefferson. He's using his own words against him here. That is a powerful rhetorical choice. But notice, he's still doing this kind of with a smile, so to speak, right? He's still doing this in a respectful tone. But right about now, Jefferson may question that, how respectful he's being by using those words. So let me finish this note here. Jefferson wrote those words, so he's calling him out. By the way, when we're writing a rhetorical analysis, we wouldn't want to say he's calling him out. We want to be a little bit sophisticated in our language, but I'm just doing this so it makes sense to you, right? And for the sake of kind of speed and brevity. He's calling him out, using his own words against him. All right, we'll stick to one rhetorical choice in that one because that's a really big one. Let's go to body 3. All right, body 3 is really important too. So I really like this paragraph because it does something that we've never talked about before. So pay attention to this part. All right, so starts off by saying, here, sir, repetition of sir, right? Still has that, that respectful tone, that repetition. Was a time in which your tender feelings for yourselves had engaged you thus to declare, you were then impressed with proper ideas of the great valuation of liberty and the free possession of those blessings to which you were entitled by nature. He's referring to when Jefferson was a colonist and he wrote the Declaration of Independence. Okay. Transition word, but this is where things change. This is where, I'm going to introduce this term right now. This is where Banneker uses something that's known as a tonal shift. Has anybody ever heard of this before? A tonal shift? I mentioned tone before, so it has that root word tone in there, right? We mentioned that tone, he's using a respectful tone. And then when he uses Jefferson's words against him, it seems like maybe he's not so friendly. I mean, still he's respectful, right? In that first paragraph, he kind of implies that he's hypocritical too. Right? But now things really change. He uses what's called a tonal shift. All that means is a change in tone, a shift in tone. If you can ever identify a tonal shift, and it's important, especially on the AP test, that's a really good thing. AP graders will love that. I just want to tell you that. Okay? So here's the tonal shift. But sir, how pitiable it is to reflect that although you were so fully convinced of the benevolence of the Father of mankind and of his equal and impartial distribution of those rights and privileges which he had conferred upon them, that you should at the same time counteract his mercies in detaining by fraud and violence so numerous a part of my brethren under groaning captivity and cruel oppression, that you should at the same time be found guilty of that most criminal act which you professedly detested in others with respect to yourselves. Now he is not being polite anymore. Now he is angry. Rightfully so, right? For what, I mean, considering the context. So this is a shift to an angry tone, and he's not hiding it anymore. After that word but. Now, we definitely need to use some evidence here. I think along with that angry tone, or as evidence of the angry tone, I want to remind you though, tone means the author's attitude about a topic and the audience. He doesn't hide it anymore that he's angry, and he uses charged words and pathos to show that. Okay, so let me pull out a couple of words here that are important that show that. Let's see, going back, he says, detaining by fraud and violence. He's saying Jefferson is doing this. He's talking about people, right? Keeping people, human beings, through fraud and violence. So these are charged words. But there are more. What else? Under groaning captivity and cruel oppression. Under groaning captivity and cruel oppression. So these are, might have been something else. Oh, and he says that most criminal act. One more comma here. That most criminal act. He's calling Jefferson a criminal, right? The Secretary of State of the United States. He's calling him a criminal now. So we clearly have charged words and pathos. All of these are connected together with this tonal shift, right? And really, like, that big idea is he's clearly calling him a hypocrite. He's not even hiding it anymore. He was hiding it in paragraph 1. He was hanging a little bit in paragraph 2. Paragraph 3, not at all, right? Like he is going straight to the jugular, clearly calling Jefferson a hypocrite. And let's finish this up. Paragraph 4, how you finish matters. Oh, I didn't mention, by the way, that pathos, father of mankind, the benevolence of the father of mankind, referring to God here. But he finishes by saying, "Sir, I suppose that your knowledge of the situation of my brethren is too extensive to need a recital here. Neither shall I presume to prescribe methods by which they may be relieved." So he's saying, all right, you know the situation about slavery. I'm not even going to tell you what you need to do to fix it. Otherwise, than by recommending to you and all others to wean yourselves from those narrow prejudices which you have imbibed with respect to them. So your racism and your prejudice. And he finishes, as Job proposed to his friends, put your souls in their souls' stead. Thus shall your hearts be enlarged with kindness and benevolence toward them, and thus shall you need neither the direction of myself or others in what matter to proceed herein. So in other words, he finishes, yes, with allusion to the Bible. This is allusion to the Bible. Finishes with allusion to the Bible. With his reference to Job. And his call on Jefferson basically to be a better man, to be a better Christian. Okay, so this we could connect, if we wanted to, we could connect to pathos regarding religion from throughout the argument. Right, so I might organize it like this. So yes, he finishes in that way, and that's really important. Before that, he references in paragraph 3, benevolence of the Father of mankind. In paragraph 1, he mentions heaven. We want to talk about, well, what is he saying about heaven? And why does he keep referring to religion throughout, Father of mankind? But this seems like it's pretty important. And it runs through the entire argument, this pathos. Right? So if we look at this in totality, we kind of see that Banneker is telling Jefferson, be a good person, right? So be a good Christian, right? If the logos didn't work before, he finishes with pathos, and that can be a strong finish.